Joining us this morning via phone is Kelly Shackelford with Liberty Institute. Good morning, sir. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, happy to do it, Jeff.
Well, let's talk about this attack on Christmas. It seems as if every year we have these attacks, but they seem to be increasing in number. Is that correct?
It is. I've been doing this for over 22 years, and it's getting worse and worse every year. And that's sort of a theme. It's not just Christmas. I would say the attacks on religious freedom, and I bet there are a lot of your listeners would probably notice attacks on freedom, period, are increasing. But we're seeing a real onslaught on religious freedom in lots of different venues. And, it's the old phrase that eternal vigilance is the price of freedom. And so we're either going to let these things be taken away that, we were given, and or we're not going to have these freedoms to pass down to our own kids. So I think it's important things like what Athens did, standing up, all the people who have stood up when they tried to take away the right of everybody around the country to say Merry Christmas. I mean, all these things that seem little, I think they're very important, or we're going to end up all censoring ourselves, and we're not going to recognize the country we're in.
Yeah, we're looking at cases, of course. One of the most famous cases is the candy cane case, where a third grader was banned from giving candy cane pins with a religious message on to classmates. And now Fort Worth ISD is wanting to kick Santa Claus out of the room.
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty incredible. In Fort Worth, they sent home a letter to all the families telling them that they were not going to allow the kids to give gifts to one another during December. And the attorney was quoted in the newspaper saying the reason they were doing that is they knew that if they gave gifts, some of the kids would probably give religious gifts. And essentially, they didn't want Christmas to break out at the school. Just unbelievable. Yeah, we talked to them, and within about 48 hours, they had changed their mind. But and you mentioned the candy cane case, the famous candy cane case. That case is actually we're going to the U.S. Supreme Court today on that case, and just incredible. What there you got the kids. Of course, the boy with the candy cane with the mentioning of Jesus who was banned, but also kids were told they could not give a pencil to their friend if it said God on it. A whole class full of kids was writing letters to the soldiers in Iraq and were literally and specifically prohibited to write Merry Christmas to the soldiers. I mean, it just goes on. And, this case that we're filing in the Supreme Court literally affects over 42 million school children. And the other side, the school officials, their main argument at the Court of Appeals was, and you're going to think I'm exaggerating, that elementary school kids are too young to have First Amendment protection.
Oh, my.
And they said, therefore, even if we do engage in religious discrimination against them, neither they nor their parents have any recourse because the First Amendment doesn't protect them.
Oh, wow. Now, what state did the candy cane case originate in?
It actually started in Plano, Texas.
Yeah.
That's 8 years ago. That's
very surprising, I think, to a lot of folks that there are those in the Lone Star State that would have such a view as that.
Absolutely. It's happening in every community and every state of this country. It's just then there's young people, there's old people, there's different situations. If you really kind of keep your eyes open and start thinking about the attacks on, religious freedom, you're going to see that they're much more prolific than they used to be, and they're a lot of them like this are insane. I mean, you just look at it and you go, why? And here's the scary thing, though. They're winning some of these cases. But I'll tell you, Jeff, that the key to me is the willingness of Americans to stand up. I'll give you an example of this. A lot of people probably heard of the case we had a few months ago in Medina Valley, outside of San Antonio, where a federal judge issued an order that any student or person in the graduation who prayed or mentioned God would be, quote, incarcerated. Mm-hmm. And we called because we said, okay, this is outrageous. This has got to be overturned. We looked at the program, saw that there were kids at the beginning and the end, and we called and said, look, let's challenge this. And they were like, we're all for that. And then we said, we need your parents because you're not old enough. None of those families were willing to challenge that. And we just sat, couldn't believe it. We thought, this is one of the most outrageous orders. It's going to stay in place because nobody's even willing to stand. the next morning we got a call out of the blue from the valedictorian and her dad saying, she said, look, I was going to acknowledge God in my valedictory address, and I don't want to go to jail. I'm ready to challenge it. And she stood up, and we were able to get that thrown out. But I thought that was such a picture of the danger in this country of other Americans who have massive takeaways of our freedoms, but just aren't willing to make a fuss, aren't willing to stand. And so I'm so thankful, for instance, in that situation for Angela. But that's what we're going to have to do. If other people are going to take away these freedoms, like Freedom from Religion Foundation, if we're not willing to stand up and say, no, you're not changing my America. We're going to stick with the founding principles and freedoms that this country was built upon.
Absolutely. Well, now, how can we help you guys out? Because you guys are on the front lines. I mean, you guys are actually going into the battlefield and doing this. David Barton told me this a while back. He said, a lot of the things that we're dealing with as Christians didn't come from the legislative or executive branches. It came from the judicial branch. And you guys are out there fighting this stuff. How can we help you out?
Well, I'd say the best thing is make sure these things are happening. Number one, I'd say we need prayer support. We're in some serious battles all over the country, and a lot of times it's somebody like Angela standing all alone, and they need prayer. And number two, a lot of people don't know these things are happening, and they need to be told. So I would say, number one, go to libertyinstitute.org. And up at the top, there's a box where you can put your email in. We don't give it to anybody, but you'll get an email once a week about what's happening, and that can cause you to pray for people. It can cause you to send that around to other folks. And then, of course, obviously, we represent as many people as we can based upon the funding we have, and we do that free of charge. But I'll tell you, Jeff, that this year we've turned down more people than ever that had great cases because we're just being overwhelmed. So people can support nonprofit tax deductible that way as well at libertyinstitute.org.
That's great stuff. Kelly Shackelford, thanks for joining us this morning.